Chaos is going to happen when students don't know what's expected. And so the flip side of that is, when we have clear practiced routines, it cuts down on those distractions. It cuts down on disruptions. It cuts down on discipline situation. Definitely will cut down the chaos that maybe is happening in your classroom. Hey, teachers, welcome to the Lead Serve Teach podcast, where we explore the intersection of leadership, education, personal growth. I'm your host, D.Paul Miller, and I'm so glad that you've joined me here for a little bit of real talk. It's a powerful conversation. So we are in the second part of our four-part series on, some of the most overlooked, but many times some of the most important actions we as teachers can take in the first few days of school. And last episode, we were talking about the importance of building relational authority and not just pounding the rules of our classroom down the throats of our students and saying, you're going to do it because we're the authority figure. No, taking the time to build the relationship first and extend respect to the students. And that leads me to today's topic, which is to not just establish routines in your classroom, but to teach routines like their content. We need to explicitly teach, model, and rehearse classroom routines as if it was an academic lesson. I think too often we assume as teachers that students just know what to do. Maybe kindergarten, first grade's a little different, but I know once you start moving to the higher grade levels, and you probably heard teachers in your own life, if you go back in your time at school, like, listen, you're in fifth grade, you know what you're supposed to do. You're in ninth grade, you're in high school now, you know what you're supposed to do. I can remember those exact times and places where teachers used that even on me. It was interesting because sometimes the teachers are right. Sometimes the teachers said, hey, listen, you know what's right and wrong. You should be doing the right thing. Okay, great. I get that. But sometimes there was just this expectation that, hey, listen, this is a classroom routine and you're just supposed to know what to do. And sometimes as a student, I'm sitting there going like, I remember you mentioning something about it on day one, but I just didn't even make a connection with it. I don't know what to do. Chaos really happens when people don't know what's expected. I was driving on the interstate the other day with my family, and unfortunately, there was a large accident. We had to kind of be routed around, of course, many, many lanes of traffic being routed in different directions. And at one point, it almost felt like a free for all. Some cars were crossing this way, some cars are crossing this way, and some are trying to go straight. But then there's an accident scene up here, and you got to figure out a way around it, being routed here, there. Where do you go? What do you do? Chaos. No one knew what was expected. Until a few moments into that chaos, of course, there were several state trooper cars, police cars that were coming in from different directions, and several of them even got out of their cars and started directing traffic. And these lanes, you're going over here. These lanes, you're going over here. And all of a sudden, when everyone knew what was to be expected, because we had guidance and people pointing in the right direction and routing all the traffic, that chaos turned into success. So that idea that chaos happens when people don't know what's expected, I wonder why we don't treat our students with the same idea. Chaos is going to happen when students don't know what's expected. And so the flip side of that is, when we have clear practiced routines, it cuts down on those distractions. It cuts down on disruptions. It cuts down on discipline situation. Definitely will cut down the chaos that maybe is happening in your classroom. It's just like classroom rules. As teachers, we're kind of focused on content. The students need to know this. They need to learn. I need to get to this stuff and teach it. I need to be instructing. And we can definitely spend some time rushing through our classroom rules. We can spend just the tiniest amount of time on things like routines. Well, routines are kind of like the expectations of what's going on in the classroom. And maybe this isn't necessarily an academic expectation. This is a procedural expectation. These are the routines of what you're supposed to do in the class. If you turn in an assignment, you do X, Y, Z. If you're going to sharpen your pencil, you do X, Y, Z. And as teachers, we don't need to just say, hey, here are the routines. Here's what you need to do. And again, I would have this mentality of like, I need to get going and I need to move through these routines. My students need to understand this quick, and we need to get to the content because the content's next. The important stuff's next. I need to instruct my content. And that's how we got to learning faster. What I found over the first couple of years is that the more I rushed through this idea of routines, the more time I wasted in the future reestablishing and reteaching those classroom procedures, those routines. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years now into education, I know the importance of teaching content in a specific way. Many of you have heard the term gradual release, and many of you know the whole idea of the I do, we do, you do mindset when it comes to teaching content. I'm going to instruct you on this content. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Actually, we're going to do it as a group. We are going to do 2 plus 2 equals 4. And then we pass it off to the student for them to do 2 plus 2 equals 4. And that's what I'm talking about. We do that with content. We do that in math. We do that in language arts. And well, my idea is that we should be teaching classroom routines like it's content. We should do an I do, we do, you do mindset when it comes to classroom routine. If you're sitting back going like, wow, man, that seems pretty intense, it should be intense. These classroom routines and procedures are the very things that keep the time from being wasted later on when you are in that all important content phase and instruction. And this is what you got to know for Algebra 1. This is what you got to know for English 2, for 10th grade English. This is what you got to know for 5th grade science. Like when you're in that zone of teaching that content, that student comes up and says, hey, I can't quite remember where we're supposed to turn in our notebooks. Where am I supposed to turn in a project that I've completed for the science class? We didn't spend the time up front teaching the routine like it was content. And now we're paying the price with disruption. And it might be that you pay the price with a discipline issue. It might be that you pay the price with wasted time. So I'm going to recommend, again, using some sort of AI tool, ChatGPT, Grok, something like that. Most teachers do. You probably already have your classroom procedures typed out in a document. Put it into chat, put it into Grok, put it into something like that and say, hey, I want to develop a quick scenario card game or maybe like a role playing game for your students where it helps them practice routines, where it has them walk through certain scenario. Hey, you got this going on. What should you do? I find it interesting whenever we get upset at students. They just don't know the routines in the classroom. But we spent maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes talking about the routines. We listed off all the things that they're supposed to do for this, that, and the other. And then we get upset when that didn't stick in their brain. Well, that would be like teaching 2 plus 2 equals 4. Everyone got it? Good. We're moving on. And then being upset a day later when our students don't get it. No, we didn't teach them 2 plus 2 equals 4 if we didn't take the time and use a read, write, think, talk mentality, or use a collaborative learning opportunity, or use a gradual release method, or whatever it may be. Well, no, we do that with content because we take content so important. Maybe it's time we start taking the routines and teaching them like their content. Maybe that's where the magic will happen. So if you're taking last episode on the importance of building relational authority and not just throwing out the classroom rules, maybe if you're taking time to do that, to build some relationship, get to know your students, taking time to not just throw rules out there, but to build some sort of contract where they are in the process of developing the guide rails for your classroom. And then you spend maybe another day teaching the routines, walking the students through this gradual release method. I do, we do, you do for your classroom routines. Maybe have the scenario card game or a role playing scripts for them to work this out. Just go and ask AI. It'll do it for you very quickly and give you these scripts, and boom, it's all based on your prompt, that all important prompt for AI. It's all based on what you put in as far as, hey, these are the parameters, these are the routines I want set in my classroom. How can I set up a role playing script for the 25 students that I have in the class? How can I set up a quick scenario card game that they can play? And it will do it for you. Save yourself that time. Go ahead and print it off or get it set up the presentation, whatever you're going to use to work with the students on that. But we should be teaching routines like their content, like it's an essential standard, because in many ways, it is an essential standard for your classroom. And again, I think when we start pairing that with building relational authority and getting the contract students to buy in on those classroom rules and then teach those routines like their content, wow. Okay, it may take 2 or 3 days to do all of that, but wow, the results that will happen, the time that will be saved, and the impact that it will have on the disruptions and the discipline issues and things like that that are going to happen in the classroom. I think all of that combined, maybe it's worth the first 4 days of school, maybe 5 days of school. I believe it's worth it because misbehavior often fills the vacuum when expectations up front, when those routines aren't taught up. It's going to be so important. It'll change the way that you look at teaching the routines of your classroom. Maybe as you start to think about your classroom routines and start teaching them as content, you may be surprised that, well, maybe there's some inefficient routines that you have. Maybe there's some routines that need to be updated in your classroom. And you'll be amazed as you're kind of doing, again, what we want our students to do a lot of times. I've talked about it on my podcast many times. This idea of metacognition, thinking about your thinking. Is it good thinking? Are you going down the right path with it? So I think it's important for us as teachers not to just slip into that old routine of doing the same thing we've always done. Sometimes a little routine, like check on your routines like this. Sometimes looking at what you do year after year, well, it can be really important to make sure you're doing the right work. So I'm going to encourage you, go out there, look at your routines, put them into ChatGPT, put them into Grok, put them into any AI tool that you want, and say, listen, I want to see if I can create a quick scenario card game. I want to create some sort of script and practice. The idea is that you're going to get your students to literally practice and carry out those routines in a single class period so that they can remember it, so that they can use it, so it becomes just second nature to them. And your classroom routines, well, when they're taught like content, your students remember them. There's no chaos because they know what's expected of them. I encourage you to go do it. I look forward to hearing from you. If you have a great experience with this, make sure that you've subscribed to our channel already. Thank you so much. Feel free to leave some comments down there if you're having success with looking at your routines and teaching your routines like their content. Because you know what? Well, you're important. You're not just a teacher, you're a leader, you're a change maker. So keep inspiring, keep striving, and don't ever quit. I'm D. Paul Miller. I'll see you here for the next episode.